Welcome to Let's Banter. Y'all, I'm excited for this episode right here. You know, I got somebody special up here to the right side of me. You feel me?
We got a doctor, y'all. Let's get into that.
Saying?
You know what I'm saying? No, we've been waiting for this one for a minute, though. This is officially one of our educational segments that we've been waiting for a long time coming, so we are super excited to get started. But before we get into today's topic, let's do a quick intro. I'll start off with my boy, Ma'am Sir over here.
Yes, sir. Follow me at Master Kayla, you know what I'm saying? Big master up in this thing. And my boy to the left.
Myself, Champagne Ojala, baby. And we also have our official guest over there. Would you like to introduce yourself and your IG?
Oh my gosh. Technically, you can call me Cassey Dela Pena. You could call me Dr. Dela Pena.
Yeah.
But I think for this, you can call me Cassey. And my IG is Cass the Leo.
Castaleo, tap in.
We didn't even have to ask about her horoscope or her zodiac sign. She already said that thing.
Oh, Leo, you right.
Yeah.
We love the Leos. We love the Leos.
Do you know your, what's that called?
The
The
big three?
And do you know the big three?
Yeah. So I think my rising is, it's a Virgo.
Okay.
And then my moon is Aquarius.
Oh.
It's kind of a big combination.
You have a strong personality, like in a good way.
It's like strong but soft.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a soft Leo, you know. I'm hard but I cry. You know what I'm saying?
But that Aquarius in your moon.
It's an Aquarius.
It is. Okay.
It is.
We love
Somebody
that.
over there representing the Aquarius signs hella hard.
Oh, yeah. Kayla's wifey is an Aquarius.
Oh, gosh.
And her other wifey is a Cancer right here. You're welcome.
You're a Cancer?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
She's a Scorpio.
My partner's a Scorpio.
Waters.
I was ready for
too.
I was ready for all the insults, you know what I'm saying?
Scorpios run deep.
Yeah,
They run deep. There's no insults. I love Scorpios.
Okay,
bad.
Same.
We're deep and we're loyal.
I've been telling y'all.
When we find the one.
all around me.
That's
My
the part, the
sister is
keyword, the
Scorpio.
one.
Yeah. Emphasis on that.
Emphasis on the one.
I had to emphasize that part, you know, because in the last episode I was really exposing myself. But it's okay. It's okay.
Letting out all the secrets.
It ain't no secret now, okay? Accountability is what you call it.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Exposure therapy, I guess.
Yeah. This is my therapy right here.
And we finally got a doctor in the building, so it's gonna get real.
Different kind of dog.
Yeah,
Swing
so because she said different kind of doctor, we want to introduce her to what kind of doctor she is. So, do you want to set it off?
Yeah, so let's start off with, we always start off with what you identify as, what your pronouns are. You already introduced yourself, so thank you for that. And then just a little bit about your background and how you relate to the queer community.
So my background in terms of what I practice. Okay, so I have a doctorate in occupational therapy. And a lot of folks.
And you just passed your
I
exam.
did. I finished my boards. It's terrifying. That's a whole other conversation, but I'm grateful to be here
Yes,
today.
that's amazing though. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
You know, I'll tell you, like, if you rewind it maybe 10 years or so, young Cass would have never imagined that she could pursue higher education. And I think that's to say that anyone can do it, you know?
I love that.
As long as you got the community and the environment that facilitates that kind of engagement.
And the mindset too, though, right? Like that goes such a long way. Right?
Mindset, a lot of desire, a lot of drive, a lot of ADHD.
I'm sure you've come girl, that's a real thing. Okay, that is a real thing. But I'm sure you came across so many obstacles and hurdles and you fought through that. So that just speaks so much volume.
Well,
that's
equally
amazing.
as much as like I've been able to say that there are a lot of people in the journey who've been able to help support me. And it doesn't even have to be like family. I had family step up when I needed family and I didn't even know I needed family. I have friends who stepped up, you know. But I think that's why it's important that we have community.
Yep. Takes a village, they say, right? It always takes a village.
Hell yeah. But yeah, as far as my background, occupational therapy, I mean, should I talk about it? Or is that later? Or
You can give a brief little intro into what that is.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
So occupational therapy, it is a profession that can treat a wide variety of conditions and different populations. I find that there's a lot of advocacy for the profession itself because a lot of folks don't know what it is. But generally and broadly speaking, it is a profession that helps facilitate people do the things that they need, want, and are expected to do. So the cool thing about being an OT is that you can use something that's intrinsically motivated for the person as part of your intervention. If this person recently had a stroke and they want to learn how to golf, or because golf was previously something super important, our intervention would lead to golf. You know, so that's just a small example of how it can be very person-centered.
Well, that small example is music to my ears.
Yeah,
I
We
love
have
that.
a golfer. We have a Tiger Woods in the making.
Yeah.
Shoot! You know, I don't know how to
I love
golf.
that
I'll
thing.
learn for you, though.
Yeah, I got you, girl. Don't
Okay,
worry.
for sure.
But I love how you spoke about like what occupational therapy is, and you spoke it with so much passion and love. Like, I think that's such a huge thing when it comes to our career choices. It's like doing what you love and what you're
That
passionate
part.
about. And
Yeah.
you just explaining that brief little overview, there was so much passion in your voice. And I just,
Yo.
I'm gonna let you know. I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
just tell you that. But
Thank
please,
you.
please continue on. We'd love to know
Well,
more.
can I ask, how did you get into OT? Like, what made you want to, pursue it?
So I've always known that I had kind of an intention to give. I think in the way that I was brought up, I had a lot of passion and presence for people in general. I just was very particular in how I wanted that to look like. And in certain professions, you can approach that with certain strengths. Like if you're very efficient, some healthcare positions may look better or feel better for you. If you're very empathetic, some may fit better for you. But for me personally, I felt that occupational therapy was the profession for me. Because for one, you get to take something like, basic things like maybe even self-care, right? Something so simple and like mundane. And we don't realize how important it is until we lose that ability. I get to be the person can help person be able to do that, right? And that feels cool. I'm like, you take little things and you make it important again. And I think the way I found the profession is kind of not really an organic process. My sister is in healthcare, so she recommended that I look into OT, and I was like, I don't want to listen to you.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it.
The rebel.
I'm the youngest of 3.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, so it's just like built into me.
Yeah.
But I looked into it more, and I was like, oh, dude, this is the one. It's like dating, you know? So that's what ended up happening. So
I love that.
Yeah.
That's
That's
amazing.
super inspiring.
That is amazing. So I do want to transition a little bit into your pronouns, what you identify as, because we do want to let our listeners know as well. And then also, I'm curious, you being queer in this industry, in the OT industry, like, how does that play out for you? Like, do you ever feel like you're kind of, in a sense, like a minority in that industry because you identify as queer? Or do you feel like there's a voice and like a place for queer people in this industry?
Whew, there's a lot to unpack.
A loaded question, I know. But let's start off with the intro. Let's do that.
So I identify as she, her. That changes sometimes. I don't really care. As far as my queerness, I think like on paper, I'm probably a lesbian. And I'm so grateful to be surrounded by a lot of beautiful queer people who are just very, just like good folks. And I think that comes with lived experience.
Yes.
Right? And so I think it's that lived experience alone in healthcare where there's a certain kind of lens that allows me to engage with not just queer patients or clients, but just all people who are just different. I think being surrounded by a community and in society where you're viewed as essentially as an outlier, right? There is just kind of a deeper level of intrinsic acceptance. And I'm grateful to have that lens going into healthcare.
I'm sorry, just the way your vocabulary is.
Yeah, the way
it's
you
amazing.
speak is
I can
like,
beatbox.
You are very
too.
well spoken.
Yes.
Like, I love
Hey! Wow, so talented. Dr. Zaddy is
Hey,
just...
the talent
Okay.
is crazy.
Y'all just call me Cass, okay?
Do you have a women celebrity crush? where
Women
you're
celebrity
like,
crush.
This is it. Mine was Tila Tequila. Is that her name?
Tila Tequila?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
You
She
for
was
real?
You never
She-
told me that.
Have you seen
else
the
was-
newest Bachelorette?
No.
She's Asian too. She's gorgeous.
Really?
She looks like
You know,
her.
I don't get
think
into
she- I don't know what
Bachelorette,
kind
but I
of
get into
Asian-
all the other shows. Like
She's like
Love
the
is
first
Blind and
Asian
stuff.
one. She's
really?
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or who's it? Is it Mila Kunis? Yeah.
That was mine.
I think wasn't she
Yeah.
like part Filipino?
Was she?
Maybe
Low-key,
I'm
I
She
heard that
kinda-
before, but I don't. Either that or Shay Mitchell.
Oh,
Shay
yeah.
Mitchell's
Shay
a
Mitchell.
good one.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all are gonna hate me for this.
It's okay. Hate is a strong word.
Maybe not. Okay, so it was a cartoon.
Jessica Rabbit?
No,
Oh.
it's
You're
Chigo.
real deep.
I'm very objective.
Bro,
I'm very objective.
Jessica Rabbit. Damn. Damn.
Have you seen Jessica Rabbit? Please.
I've seen her.
Do a picture.
She was Jessica Rabbit?
Jessica Rabbit. I was like wholesome. I'm like Shigo from like Kim Possible.
Oh, yeah!
Right.
No,
It's
she was-
okay. Shigo.
She's fire.
Yeah.
She's fire.
She
and
was.
then Megan from Hercules.
I
Megan,
love
right?
Megan. I love
Is that her name?
Hercules.
Over here.
I love Hercules.
You
Megan.
Dude.
I love her.
She was,
She was just banging.
dude.
I mean, Disney, y'all knew what you was doing.
You know, for us, little lesbians.
No, but from Kim Possible, yes, and she was a villain too,
She was
so it was
a
like
villain,
more
too.
attractive.
Yeah.
Okay,
That
I've
girl
never had a
energy.
cartoon character that I was attracted to. Mine's is actually real. But y'all gonna probably
You can make Jessica
dislike me
Rabbit
for
real.
this. Strongly dislike.
What? Who'd you like?
It was Kristen from Laguna Beach.
Kristen?
You never watched
I
Laguna
never
Beach.
watched.
The silence.
But
is
for
so
those who
loud.
have, that's Amar knows because
Kristen.
she's watched Laguna Beach. I know.
Yeah, no, I think Jessica Rabbit's still better. But that's okay.
Frankly,
No, Shigo is.
I think
What
I
the fuck?
need
Shigo is,
honestly,
yeah.
I need to see.
She looks like
don't wanna
Lizzie
yuck it up.
McGuire, but like older. So sorry.
Okay, Lizzie.
I didn't know I was gonna be into into that field, but it happened.
That's so random for you, Kayla. But you like what you like.
I like what I like.
Oh my goodness. Let's transition really into like today's topic and what we're trying to dive into. So going back to the educational piece, we do want to focus on today's episode on queer parenthood. And again, we have Cass, I was going to say Dr. Zaddy, in the building to sort of deep dive and enlighten us on her research in queer parenthood and to not only help us understand sort of the roadblocks and hurdles that come across with that, but also the resources available and how those that are interested in that next step of becoming queer parents, those that are potentially planning for the future, me and Kayla together. She's gonna have my baby.
What? Okay, that just took a turn. Hello?
All for that.
Hey, she was agreeing for a second though.
You did say yes.
I did say
I said
yes,
me
but
and you
I was
together.
like, I thought it was gonna be towards
We're gonna be co-parenting soon.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
I love that. Blended families.
I guess.
Look at this. One day you'll see this. But really, just to kind of really give our listeners just some resources and advice on those next steps, because it's definitely a new space for us, and I'm sure it's new space for a lot of our listeners too. So shall we get into that?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. So we do have a few questions. So again, the segment structure is going to be a bit Q&A, but we do have the subject matter expertise here to sort of navigate through these questions. And yeah, we'll go from there. So our first question for you is, what are some of the unique challenges that LGBTQ plus individuals face when planning to become parents?
There's a lot of layers to that.
Oof, let's peel back the onion.
Let's peel it back. Well, we can talk about the lens and the lived experience of being a queer person in a society that's inherently cis and heteronormative, right? So already we're going into a situation and thinking about parenthood and what that might look like as a queer person. Sometimes that means that we don't have the social scripts, right? We don't necessarily always have the support from our blood family, right? And then sometimes we do have the support of our chosen family, but that doesn't necessarily mean they can be in the room with us during labor and delivery, right? Or if there's like medical complications, who can be in the room with us, right? So there's a lot of obstacles and barriers in terms of being a parent without concern or worry outside of what being a parent already is. It's just an added intersectional layer of being a parent who is queer. On top of that, being Black, being brown, being trans, right? So there's so many things we kind of have to think about. And you have to kind of dissect that all before, for some folks, queer folks, dissect that all before you even think about being a parent. If you choose to be a parent.
Man.
Right?
That is like that. Like you should just sometimes think even before thinking of like that next step, whether it's IVF or surrogate or whatever step we take, it's like just planning for like the delivery, the labor, already thinking like a year in advance, right? And then I'm sure there's more challenges you think after the baby's born, like the next steps and all that stuff.
It's a
like
process.
man.
It's a process. But that's when you're in it.
Yeah.
There's this whole really long contemplative phase of parenthood that happens before you can even consider being a parent. Because first of all, you have to fork out a ton of money. You have to know that your insurance covers it, and we can talk about that later because there's new litigation that has actually made that more accessible, which is good news.
Yes,
In California,
Yeah, so y'all don't come here though.
I mean,
we're overpopulated.
Shoot. We're also Californians, just like their own bubble. You know?
I know.
It is so different.
We're really grateful for that, to be honest.
For sure.
Really grateful for that. But yeah, no, that the challenge is itself. Do you feel like how we've progressed today in the LGBTQ plus community that it is a bit accessible and easier, or do you feel like there's still bigger things we need to overcome before it becomes like normalized in a sense?
I think we're like, if you live in California or in one of the more progressive states where you are legally protected, and there are laws called parentage laws that protect you as a parent, right? In which you have legal guardianship over your child, which is wild because even though this kid came out of you, you know, you're not always protected in some states.
Oh, I didn't
know
know
what?
that.
That is something I've
In
never
some
known.
states, because depending on where the embryo comes from, that may change. So if you are caring for the biologically related donor, which could be your partner, you may not actually be legally the parent.
Wow.
In
I did
some
not know
states.
that.
Even
Okay.
if you're married, like
If you're
on
married,
paper?
that's the thing though. You will have more protections if you're married.
Okay.
Across the board.
Wait, okay, I have a follow-up question on this because I want some clarity. So let's say, example, me and my partner decide that, you know, we want to have a child and we go through a random sperm donor, like through the IVF process, not in California or the other progressive states. Are you saying that like the legal rights over the child, that random sperm donor potentially can interject?
In some cases, it depends.
Okay.
But that's why there's a really, really rigorous legal process when you're going through this, especially in other states where your rights are not necessarily protected.
Yeah.
Like or like naturally or quickly protected, right? In California, it's you just acknowledge it, you sign a consent form
Yeah.
with a
and then-
donor, and it's great.
Okay.
But it depends. It really depends. I can't give you a solid answer.
Yeah. No,
But
for
if you
sure.
want to be safe, do it in California.
Yeah.
All right, so on to the next question. We have, what strategies do you suggest healthcare providers to reduce discrimination and support queer parents? Let me know if you want me to repeat that.
No, that's a good question. So I think for healthcare providers in general, they always have their own guidelines for like ethical codes and principles and practice acts, which basically give them, you know, where they're supposed to be like, do no harm or non-maleficence, right? So
I'm sorry, just, you know, for certain viewers like me, can you define that last word?
Non-maleficence. It's just basically
Non-maleficence?
don't do harm.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much. Don't do bad.
Okay.
Don't be. I'm sorry. Also, if you need
No,
clarification,
you're good. No,
this is
I
actually
need it
good
for
feedback.
me.
This is good feedback because I need to be better about explaining things. So
No,
I
the words
appreciate
are-
you asking questions.
Okay, cool. But that's really great. I like that.
Yeah, and that's a good example of a patient-provider interaction. When sometimes it can be really scary for patients to ask for clarification because providers
That's correct.
are on the go.
Very much so.
That's how I
Right?
used to feel at my doctor visit, so I
Yeah.
completely understand
It's so intimidating.
It is.
It's so, and then even more so as a queer person, and having to, like, we could talk about the scope of practice for OTs, right? Right. We are not considered with just the problem at hand. We're considered about everything that makes a person a person. We're concerned about the roles and routines that they take up, what their day looks like. We're concerned about what is important to them. What are the social dynamics and contexts that surround them, right? So these are the kind of like really important conversations that we need to have, but it's just there's not always enough time, right? But I think that's why as like providers it's so important to make room for questions like that. But it can be hard because you never know what healthcare looks like. Everybody has a lot on their cognitive load or on their mind, right? But I appreciate you asking to slow down and clarification. And I think a good provider will do that because not only are they expected to teach you, but they're also expected to learn from you. And that's a common thing for queer people in general. Like there's a lot of research that shows queer folks feel that they're the information centers for their medical provider. Because depending on where their medical provider got their education from, sometimes there's not a lot of DEI or like inclusive educational topics that help make it feel safe.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
So, I mean, it sucks that some of us have to do labor as queer folk, being patients in healthcare. But don't be afraid to educate, because if you have the capacity to share something with your provider that you feel like is important to making a queer person feel safe in healthcare, that can help make the next person feel safe.
No, I love that.
Making you hit that, like making people feel safe in healthcare is really important, because I remember, going to my appointments, like I would get nervous saying that I'm a queer woman and I'm dating someone, another girl or whatever. So yeah, having that anxiety as a patient is definitely like important with your doctor, and you want to build that relationship with them and stuff. So I get that.
And on top of that too, like one thing I always felt with like healthcare was like body in, body out, So I don't even think I told you this, but I was like previously so I'm in the tech industry now, but before that I was actually going to school to be a physical therapist. And I did my undergrad and everything, and I was looking to apply to grad school and taking like the exams before getting in and all that. And I started volunteering at high-end places. I don't want to, put names just for the protection and all that. But when I went into the PT industry, I felt like the doctors were just body in, body out, and there was no empathy. And there was no, like, let me make a connection. So I think it's so important for, our generation coming into the healthcare industry, and then also the next generation to come, is that to focus on building that connection, having that empathy, because it's so important. And not only from the, doctor perspective of building that relationship and trust with your patient, but also the patient having that like safe space of like, I can lean on, my doctor because they actually do care about me. I'm not just like a person they're checking off a list. So I love that you touched on that, because I just think it's important for today and for the future to come. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think with like not only just doctors, but everyone up and down the chain.
Yeah.
Right and left.
Absolutely.
Right?
Providing any type of service.
Any type of service. But the thing is, like, you're right. It does feel like it is just kind of like a cog in the machine. Like there's a lot of pieces that play a role in this healthcare system. And we all know universally that the American healthcare system isn't perfect, right? But I think if you find that as a queer person, that there is something so present to you in your experience, specifically to you being a queer person, and you have the capacity to share that and educate, that may be a good place to start for this medical provider, because at the end of the day, these folks also can learn and have shown that they can learn and probably really like to learn. So, I also think it's important of the delivery, right?
Absolutely.
There's a right time and place to give feedback and give input. But sometimes if you talk to the right people, you can make organizational change.
You're right. And it does go both ways, actually. We did touch on a previous episode that, sometimes people that aren't involved in the queer community, they're scared to ask questions because they don't want to be offensive or, overstep a boundary. And so I think you're right. Us doing the due diligence of like speaking up for ourselves and advocating for ourselves if there's something that we specifically need, especially in, a healthcare environment, I think that's a great first step.
Yeah.
So no, that's actually a great point you called out.
Self-advocacy is key.
Yeah.
But then when you have the capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Because you do have to exchange energy and, give and receive. And so that's a lot to take on too. And if
absolutely
your personality is more introverted or you're just a bit more anxious and stressed out in those environments, then maybe just taking baby steps.
Oh gosh.
Right?
And it can be.
Yeah.
It can be really stressful. I feel that.
That's awesome. Well, on to our next question. If I'll let Kayla take it here. Because she has a password. What's your passcode, girl?
You know it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is her passcode, y'all.
I saw that.
Next question is, what are some of the biggest barriers to accessing fertility services for queer individuals? And I think this is where we could also intersect into the new laws passed here in California.
Yay! Okay, so the American Association of Reproductive Medicine, quite recently, I think back in October, they released a statement expanding the coverage for the inclusion criteria for fertility services, which previously it was exclusive to heterosexual couples who had to prove, which is hard, prove that they could not conceive for up to a year, which basically eliminates any person who just wants to conceive on their own or same-sex couples.
Wow.
Because you may be infertile as a same-sex couple, but that doesn't proving that you can't that you're infertile is not possible, right? Because biologically, right? So now they have expanded that definition. So now it includes same-sex couples and individuals who require medical intervention for reproductive services.
That is awesome. I didn't know the individuals were included too. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
which
awesome.
is great.
I do know people that are looking to go down the path of being a single parent and just being able to like embark that journey. So I didn't know that was included as well. That's awesome.
It's really great.
That is amazing. And that's in California only.
Well, so that only touches on the American Association of Medical Reproductive Medicine.
Got it.
That was the guideline that the statement that they released.
Okay.
But the good thing about that is that whatever they release, insurers will follow. And you'll find that more progressive states will then follow. So now California is one of the 15 states that require or mandate insurers to offer those services.
That is
Nice.
amazing.
I love that.
Wow. There's no like retroactive approaches for people that have gone through like IVF and other fertility
Retroactive,
options, right?
as in
like people who have done it before, like insurers can't like go back and compensate them or cover them, right? Like that's kind of.
I don't imagine that they would.
Is that effective immediately? Do you know?
No, so it's effective. Okay, if everything goes according to plan. Sometimes things get delayed, as we know with politics and just like legislation in America. That's just it happens, right?
Yes.
But the anticipated date that this will be active is, I believe, July 1st, 2025.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
That's coming up soon.
So it's good news.
Awesome. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
And like previously, like some insurers offered coverage for reproductive services, but it was limited to more conservative options or like lower cost services. It's always money, you know. So like fertility treatment, diagnostic testing. Sometimes they covered it, but not always. In California, you're allowed to do that previously, like cover for assistive reproductive technology or ART, but they weren't requiring or mandating employers and insurers to do it. But it's not all insurers, it's just the big name ones. Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. I mean, damn, that's amazing. Aside from that, do you feel like there's other barriers that queer individuals face with fertility clinics and fertility services, or do you think that was one of the biggest hurdles to overcome?
I think like logistically, that's a huge barrier is insurance coverage and like the fiscal responsibility of it. That part is hard, but there's also like social barriers, right? Making sure that people feel safe to go into clinics and ask for these services as a same-sex couple. Ensuring that the intake forms are not just binary. There's like inclusive forms that are non-binary, right? Maybe even using terms as parent 1, parent 2 instead of mom and dad. Right. And we also see that in education and school settings too. Parents will be referred to as mom and dad instead by their name or their preferred pronouns. But that's another barrier. Like once your kid reaches school age, you have to make sure that you feel comfortable sending them off to school.
Yeah.
Right. So some teachers are amazing and they will work with a parent and be like, hey, is it cool? Like it's Mother's Day. Do you want me to use a Mother's Day card? Like, how do you feel about us doing that? And the parent will be like, maybe just make a card that says, I love my parents, right?
Yeah.
So like those kind of conversations are good to have. And part of that is making sure that people feel safe enough to have them.
Yeah. There's so much like depth into it. If you
really
think about it, I've had conversations about, when I become a parent and like, does my partner want to be mom and I'm mommy? But like, I didn't even think about like parent 1, parent 2, or just like maybe going by the name. But I think at least for us, like it's been such a societal thing of like, it's mom or it's dad.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's no other option. Like you're either, dad, daddy, papa, whatever you call them. And then even thinking about like Mother's Day, Father's Day, and how that affects, children that have queer parents. Like that is
like non-binary.
Yeah.
trans parents,
Non-binary.
right?
Yeah.
But the thing is like family, gender norms, gender constructs are so deeply rooted in the culture and in education. They will use family dynamics to teach kindness, to teach sharing, like with your sibling, to teach, you know, just being able to listen to a parent, you know,
respect and all
respecting,
that, right?
It's so deeply rooted, especially in early education.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a reframing and a little bit of a shift in how that might look like for queerness. But again, it goes back to the barrier of parents feeling safe enough to express the want.
Absolutely. I mean, this is where it all starts, right? Is just even having these conversations and bringing awareness to that. I think it's so important because honestly, I didn't even think about that until we just talked about it right now.
Dude, same.
You really don't. You don't, right? And maybe it's because I'm, you know, right now in my life, I'm not planning for kids, but those are things to think about when you're starting to head in that direction. So props to the queer parents out there and the children that have queer parents. You know, it'll get better. I don't know when, but it's getting there. So that's all that matters.
So like I was fortunate enough to meet and talk to a lot of really amazing queer folk about their experience. And it's the same thing of like things that I never would have thought about until after being a parent that came up. Like there's so much anxiety and fear. There is so much preparation that happens legally and biologically. There are biological timelines. You can't just spontaneously plan to have a kid. You have to go through the system.
Yep.
If you're at a later age, they recommend that you do fertility testing to see where you're at, right? And then you have to go into the process of ensuring that you can get these services coverage, or you have to save up. It's just a lot more to think about. And it's the barriers, it's just kind of part of this. It's just kind of part of it. The obstacles is probably a better word. There's research that talks about a term called ambiguous sense of loss. And this is something that you can apply to different contexts. But within the context of queerness, when you come out as queer, society often views you as a person who is no longer interested in having kids, or that's just not part of the story now. Now that you're out, queerness means no kids. That's just something that a lot of people, especially if you're not queer, tend to kind of dismiss because, okay, now that you're out, less and less support and information will come to you in passing in social gatherings, you know? So it's now as a queer person, we have to be more self-sufficient and like figure that out. And that's where community and chosen family comes in play.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's so true. Like I don't think I've ever spoke on this, but you know, my background, this is sort of kind of jumping into another topic that leads to, you know, being a parent. But in my culture, when you're like at 25 as a woman in my culture, they start talking about marriage. So growing up, before I came out, my parents were like, when are you gonna get married? When are you gonna get married? Like, you know, when are we gonna find somebody? Yeah. And then when I finally came out, no one brings it up. And you know, I'm glad they don't bring it up because I'm like, I'm not gonna get married to a man, I'm gonna get married to a woman. But then it also kind of like disheartens me because I'm like, do you not care that I do want to get married? Like, it might not be a man, but I do want to get married. I do want to have kids. And, you know, when I first came out to my mom, that was the discussion of like, well, why are you going to have kids? How are you going to have kids? And it's just so like, it makes you just get anxious. It makes you start overthinking things. And you're like, wait, do I want to have kids? Do I want to raise kids? Like, will I have support? Will my child have support? Like, you know, I have a sibling. Are my parents going to be more active grandparents in their lives over my kids? Like, you just start to go down that rabbit hole and start thinking those things. And that's even outside of you navigating your journey as a queer parent, you know, and being able. So just you mentioning that, I'm like, it's such a real thing. Like, once you identify as queer, so many things get X'd out for you that you're not even Xing out, that society just X's out because they assume, well, they can't do that now because they're queer.
Yeah. They don't even ask if you even want to have kids.
Yeah, they really don't.
Oftentimes. Sometimes I'm lucky to have family. Actually, side story, when I came out, the topic of kids and marriage never really came up. The first person to bring it up was my 102-year-old grandmother. At the time, she was like 90.
Wow.
So
I love that.
She's incredible. Like, we were at a social gathering and, you know, like I have cousins around my age who are heterosexual, who are straight. And, you know, they were getting, like, given that they were preparing to get married because they are having a wedding coming up. So that was a big topic at a lot of the parties. Like, okay, where do you want to get married? Who's going to be the ring bearer? And I'm like part of the conversation, but I realized not until my grandma turned to me in the same setting and asked me, so when are you going to give me grandkids? And I'm like, no one has ever asked me that. And I'm like, why are we talking about me? I didn't even know how to respond.
Yeah.
Because no one has ever thought about me potentially being a parent.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden I come out and I'm like, oh, not a parent anymore. Just the queer auntie.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe they don't think that. I think I'm very fortunate because my family is very supportive and loving. And like now they're super involved. They have all the questions.
Oh, that's amazing.
But that, you know, being the first queer person to be openly queer in the entire family.
It's a lot.
It can be a lot. It can be. But, you know, she said, when are you going to give me grandchildren? And my partner was sitting next to me and she was looking at both of us. And I was like, I never thought about
I love
this.
that though. I love that so much.
Yeah. But then I knew. I was like, you know what? I want to be a mom.
Yeah.
I think I'd be a cool mom. You know?
I can see it.
You most definitely would.
I can see it.
Thank you.
Off the energy and the vibes.
Y'all too. Y'all
that's
too.
amazing though. Like to, yeah, that's amazing. Like just to break those generational barriers, right? Like
For sure.
It's starting here.
So next question we have is, what advice would you give to queer individuals or couples who are thinking about becoming parents? You want me to repeat that?
Ooh.
Such
No, I
as
have to
myself
ponder
and
it.
Caleb.
Take your time.
What advice? I don't know that I'm qualified to give advice.
Even just personally, not professionally.
I think intellectually, logistically,
Yeah.
know where you are. If you're in California, know your laws. If you're in another state, know the laws that surround parentage. Okay. Generally, it's safer to be married first before you pursue fertility services or adopt. It's just, you could save your butt generally. But in California, sometimes it's a little bit more laxed here, but still, marriage is good. And also, don't be afraid to ask those difficult questions about, you know, about the safety and inclusion of your child in school-based practice, and asking your medical providers if they, you know, or educating your medical providers on how they can be better and making you feel safe. But then again, that is also something you shouldn't feel like you have to do, because that's emotional labor, right?
That part.
It's exhausting being queer sometimes. It's exhausting being in a minority.
It is.
And it just becomes more exhausting with intersectionality, right? Yeah, it's just being aware of parentage laws, going through understand that you have to go through a legal process, and then understanding your insurance coverage and what your options are, and then also being able to financially cover the process.
I want to add a little bit to this question.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioning all those points. Is there a resource or like a one-stop shop you recommend where people can go educate themselves or do a bit more research? Because I think that can be
Heck yeah.
intimidating in itself.
Yeah. So there's this really cool resource that I use. It's an organization called Movement Advancement Project. And they use data across the country to track some of the policies involved with anything pretty much related to Roe v. Wade, related to parentage, like adoption, fertility services, related to voting. And they have there are a lot of visual aids that can make it a lot more, I guess, understandable for just like the everyday person. So it's called Movement Advancement Project, or MAP. Yeah, they were a good resource for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could add the information if you'll share it with us.
Sure.
On our descriptions below. I think that'd be awesome. to
Yeah,
share
it's a
with
cool
everyone.
website. Honestly, check it out. And if you want to specifically look up parentage policies, I would look up parenting rights or parentage policies. It should be in there.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. The last question we had was, how can listeners connect with your work or learn more about queer parenthood? And I know we touched on it on the resource, but if there's anything in addition you want to add to that.
You know, I'm still learning I have a website that I developed as part of my deliverables.
yeah.
It's called Queer Parent Guide.
Oh, I love that. We'll also drop that resource on our description
it's still
below.
in the works. It's not the best. I'm,
Hey, hype yourself up, okay?
Yeah, don't
underestimate
underestimate it.
It's a work in progress,
Yeah.
but I think
Don't
it's
try
still
to
good to share it out.
Downplay how
You know,
well it is.
I mean, well, it's essentially not a super dense guide. It is for the person who wants to explore parenting and be pointed to a resource that points them to other related resources. So it's pretty minimal, but I think that's what's important because information overload is a really real thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think when it comes to the parenting or exploration or learning process, it's a long one. So
the sigh is crazy.
Yeah.
But I think just having that
from what I
one-stop
hear,
shop is so important.
Yeah.
Like a centralized, even if it takes you to other resources, but it's like just having a centralized area just helps so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
And takes away
Definitely.
from like, okay, I know where to go for this, for that. So I love
Yeah.
that you're doing that.
thanks. Thank
We
you.
will definitely share the draft. I'm looking forward to the final product. Add a little more pressure. No, I'm just like,
Oh yeah, there's like stuff for like advocacy in the healthcare setting. There's like resources for community integration or not community integration, community involvement, finding your local resources. There's information on the policies and
Awesome.
stuff like that.
I will
Family
definitely be
planning.
looking at that.
I
So
love that.
it's very intimidating. I haven't even started the process yet. The only thing we've had conversations on is like, where do I want to raise my kids, like community wise, right? Because going to school, like, you know, they're used to like heterosexual parents and, you know, my child might be the outlier. Like, how's that going to affect them mentally and emotionally?
Yes.
Those are conversations we've had. So that's what scares me, I'll be honest, in terms of parenthood. But I think it all goes back to the foundation that you carry at home and how the child is being raised and the support that the child will have. So I love that. I love that.
So I just wanted to touch on when you were talking about the interviews. Was there, with those interviews that you had with the queer parents, did you find anything that was like pretty similar or in common across in terms of the anxiety and fear that they had?
With the interview process, I was fortunate enough to talk to folks from a very wide background. You know, folks who identified as queer, lesbian, trans, non-binary. You know, I think just being this kind of minority, there's intrinsically going to be that fear. As far as how that plays a role in parenthood, I think based on the interviews, a lot of the information that I pulled from that, or the themes I pulled from those interviews, had a lot of fears with navigating the healthcare system. And not only trying to access the healthcare system, but existing in the healthcare system. And having the emotional capacity to either, you know, to be able to focus on your labor process or your partner's labor process, and then also encounter some medical providers who are not using the right pronouns, who are not being respectful of very explicit boundaries. And so that is something that may happen. And I hope that that can be improved with time. And that's why these conversations need to happen.
I agree.
You know? But, you know, as a medical, like being in the healthcare field, it's hard too, because there's a long list of things that has to be done. And there's often a lot of organizational pressure. But I mean, I can speak for myself when I say, if I have been able to meet a client or patient where they're at in terms of what they need to feel safe, that is great. I'm happy to do that. I don't care about the list of things that I have. I will do my best to make sure you feel safe. And I want to assume most people are like that.
I love that.
I don't know that all people are like that, but I want to assume.
You know,
that
but the
they
fact
are.
that you're even like making sure that it's a priority and how you're interacting with your patients and you know, the people that you come across, I think that's just sets the stage. Like one thing I had mentioned in previous episodes is like a lot of queer folks are trailblazers. Like there are things that we're doing and like setting that status quo of like other people may not even think about it or consider it or do it themselves. And sometimes we have to start those conversations. We have to take those actions and hopefully set the example that other folks can pick up from or learn from. So I consider you a Dr. Zaddy Trailblazer. Dr.
Dude, I need to change my name.
Building.
Dr. Zeddy.
No, but
I'll be like, hi, my name's Dr. Zeddy.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hired. You're hired. But no, I mean, it's like we said in the beginning of the episode, you speak so passionately about the work that you do, the research that you've done, and the field that you're in. Like, I admire that so much.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate
Thank
that
you.
so much. One question I do have for you is you are our official first external guest. So we all had met at Oakland Pride, which I'm so grateful for that we ran into each other.
Ditto.
And we connected. But if you can just share what made you want to reach out and want to come on this platform so that we can hopefully encourage other listeners to also, you know, take that step and connect with us. Because this is what we're all about. This is what our platform's all about. So the fact that you did that, like, thank you for that. And I'm so glad we did this episode.
We had
Thanks for
flowers.
having
I
me.
just
Yeah.
throw them at you.
Yeah.
These are flowers.
Yeah, we'll just add a gif of like raining flowers on Dr.
Just like
Zaddy.
I'm gonna edit in.
yeah.
It's just like
On Dr.
flowers.
Zaddy, just tell her.
Good. But thank you for making me feel comfortable. I appreciate that. And I think it takes a certain quality of a person to be able to do that for folks who especially are not in your current circle.
Right.
Agreed.
And I think the main reason why I wanted to do this was because of our interaction in Oakland. When I first met you both, I felt very safe. I thought you guys were very considerate of my pronouns and just who I was as a person and what kind of information I felt sharing, because you guys were doing interviews. And I felt like, okay, cool, these folks are dope. But the other thing is that this kind of information is often gatekept, right? With queer parenthood, queer fertility. There's a lot of information on that. And oftentimes if it's research and you want to be evidence-based with this kind of information, oftentimes literature or articles are not accessible to the general public.
Yeah, no, it most definitely isn't.
Yeah.
So, like, when we went through, when you sent us, I was like, wow, this is very informative. Like,
Yes.
You're right.
I did, like, literally just going through, you know, when we were in school, it's definitely, like, you touched on it, it's gay kept, you don't see it as often. It's not common, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. How dare you?
Now Kayla's doing it.
Why'd you do
Kayla,
that?
can she talk?
I thought I felt safe. No, you're good. But the thing is, like, not only that it's gate kept, it's also that, like, you have to pay for these resources. That is gate kept. But on top of that, the literature is so dense, and not just the average lay person who doesn't look at research articles all day can interpret that information and pull important data and be like, oh, okay, this is important. You know, it's I think this platform is great to access everybody, right? And I know it's and I think there's a quality about having conversations about something that makes it more human and more natural. And I think that is important to not only addressing something that should be inclusive, that everybody has an intrinsic right to being a parent, right? It's a foundational right? But we talk about it. So this is good. This is good stuff. And this is what I wanted. I was just like, let's talk about being parents. I'm not a parent, but I want to be.
Yes.
I want to be.
I
All of
love
us.
that.
Yeah.
All of
I
us
love
here.
that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for just sharing that in particular, and also just for this episode and all the information you shared.
Sharing your special
today.
presence.
Aw,
Yes.
you're
It was
most
very special.
Yes,
Thank you.
great energy over here. Great energy. We love it, especially
Yeah.
from our last episode. We did have.
We needed something
We need
lighthearted.
something
and,
lighthearted. We
yes.
talked about toxic
Oh,
relationships.
I saw that one.
A lot of things were exposed.
Yeah.
No.
so-
It's a good, but again, conversations like that need to happen.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. The day-to-day conversation shouldn't be gate kept either. Experiences shouldn't be gate kept. You know what I'm saying? People learn from that. So we're hoping that we're just making that impact as we continue forward in this journey with Les Banter. So we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for all the information you've shared. If there are any questions you have for Cass, I won't say Dr. Zaddy, aka Dr. Zaddy, reach out, tap in with us. We'll also tag her Instagram handle if you guys want to reach out to her direct. If you all want to reach out to her directly, let me be open and neutral here. And yeah, with that, you want to take us out or you want me to do it?
You usually do it. Hello?
I know. Okay.
Hello.
With that said, you can catch us on Amazon, on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple
iHeartRadio.
Music.
We haven't been saying that in the last couple
iHeartRadio, and eventually we'll have our own radio station. That's the goal. Les Radio.
Y'all gotta
There
have
we
one of
go,
those
man.
like intro beats.
We're
trying to
find
man.
Produce
someone.
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're trying to find someone.
We could use your beatbox. I heard it
Yeah,
a little
actually,
bit.
go. Do it.
for
go.
real?
Yeah, go. Do your go do it.
Ooh.
Hey, do your voice.
I can't do welcome to Let's Banter.
Hey, there's our intro right there, y'all.
La, la,
Thank
la,
you
la.
so much, Cass, for being here. With that says,
With that said,
let's
Les bros and let's
Dr.
doctor.
Zaddy
Out.
We're gonna do it the right way. We're gonna say
Dela Pena.
It's Dela Pena.
Should we have like a handshake or some shit?
Hey, honestly, let's just hug it up.
add a big star
Let's just hug it up.
I said we're not on the market.
Oh, okay.
So don't get any thoughts.
The
you know?
not had to be harder. You gotta then
not. Add a little emphasis caption. No. Not today, Satan. Let's go back to the question.
I can't do that.
Okay, it's okay.
Whoa,
You can
that was
beatbox.
embarrassing.
I can't beatbox.
I said biddy doo bid.
That's a new one. We can use that one too.
What's Baymax? But a little. Thank you.
Your lips are voluptuous, man.
Damn, them things are shining.
It's first of all PSLs.
Oh, sorry. Pumpkin spice
I identify as she/her. That changes sometimes. I don't really care.
Okay.
To be frank,
I like that.
gender's a
You like daddy?
construct.
It really is.
I am daddy.
Dr. Daddy. Dr. Zaddy over here.
Hold on. Okay, give it